Good morning and welcome everybody to the Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Cloud Training Series. This is our second webinar. It's a series of 4 webinars, so thanks for joining us today. We will be covering editing pictures, some tips and tricks to get more productivity out of your time editing, and then we're going to dive deeper into sound as well. So should have no lack of topics to cover today and should be a good time. We are joined by Colin Smith. Colin Smith is a Adobe Senior Solutions Consultant, but what you may or may not know about him is he is one of the best Adobe demo artists and really one of the best presenters in our industry, period. So Colin, we're very excited to have you joining us today. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to do this with us.
I am freaking out because I love doing this stuff, so no problem.
Very cool. Well, I would highly recommend anybody out there check out Colin, check him out on Twitter, and check out his series at tv.adobe.com. A lot of really helpful videos out there that will really help you get the most out of all of your Adobe products, but really a great expert on Adobe Premiere Pro. So check out those resources. They're all up there, and they're all free for you to check out. So just a reminder, this is our second webinar as we had touched on. Today we'll be covering those topics, but we've got 2 more after this. So the dates are up there, and if you did not have a chance to catch our first one, that is actually up online at promax.com. So just go to promax.com and there's a little link for webinars, and you should be able to find that. And if you don't, just shoot us an email and let us know, and we'll point you in the right direction. So I also, before we get started, wanted to let you guys know we do have a second webinar. Actually, today we've got a webinar on understanding the benefits of shared storage. So if you are in a multi-user environment and you aren't running shared storage, this webinar is just really an educational thing to kind of let you know when you might want to look at shared storage, what the benefits are of that. So that is today. It's a 30-minute webinar at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So if you want a link to sign up for that, just shoot us an email at marketing@promax.com, and we would love to have you join us. So without further ado, let's get this party started. And I do encourage you, send us feedback. We'd love feedback on all of our webinars and all of our educational resources. This is something we've done for a long time and continue to do and want to always be improving ourselves. So please give us any feedback that you might have. So Colin, I'm going to send things over to you, and let's dive into some fun.
Okie doke. And hopefully I am sharing the correct screen. I happen to have 4 displays hooked up to this video card, so hopefully you're seeing the Premiere Pro sequence.
I see a sequence. I see some skateboards and
okay.
A guy that looks like he's about to fall down.
Excellent. All right. Well, welcome everyone. And in this segment, we are going to look at a bit of audio finesse, audio editing finesse, and some trimming and a few other things that I think really make sense when you put them all together. The first thing I want to talk about is just creating new sequences, because we're going to be talking about audio, and when you create a new sequence, we give you these presets, but what you might be missing is over here on the right-hand side where it says tracks, and in here you can set up all of your tracks. This is where you can, come in here and grab a whole bunch of tracks and your master out, and you can have up to 32 tracks on your master now, and we actually have unlimited tracks in our sequence. So it's not 99, it's absolutely unlimited. There's several different types of tracks. Standard tracks is what you would normally think of as a stereo track. We don't call them stereo because they will accept both stereo and mono. 5.1, which will accept only 5.1. Adaptive, which we can map to different sources, which I'll show you in a bit. Mono, obviously, and then of course we've got stereo, 5.1, and adaptive and mono submixes, and we'll get into that. But I just wanted to tell you where your audio tracks settings are over here. The easiest way to make a sequence, if you're familiar with working with After Effects or, well, After Effects specifically, if you take any clip or multiple clips and you drag them down to this new item icon, that's exactly like dragging an asset in After Effects to the new item, or right-click and choose New Sequence from Clip. It makes a new sequence with the exact format of that clip, and you're done. It's just a lot easier to do that. The only time you ever need to go into the Make a New Sequence is when you want to create a different setting from the sequence you're bringing in. And this could be something as simple as you're creating an HD sequence, but you're using 4K media. Maybe you want to take that 4K media and actually manipulate it, move its XY coordinates around, something that David Fincher does a lot with Red Epic footage in a smaller format. Even though he's going out to 4K, he still has 5K to play with, which gives him more options. All right, over on the sequence in our timeline here, I just want to point out that on the left-hand side, this area can be customized, and I can either click on the little wrench icon here, or I can right-click inside this area and choose Customize, and you can customize both audio and video areas. One thing that you might not want is this toggle sync lock thing, which has kind of been around since the beginning of time, but if you don't use it, don't need it, don't want to see it, you can drag it off, get rid of it, click OK, and you'll never see it again. Now you just have the typical eyeball to turn off the visibility of that layer. Same thing with audio. We can go down and customize the audio tracks down in here. This is way more useful because we can do things like take a track meter, drag the track meter in here, and the track volume. So both of these things, you might normally have to go to the mixer to check out what is my current track volume and get levels. But now when I click on that and I have that track opened up, what I'm doing right now is just using the scroll wheel, and it's going to open that track up for me. And as I play it, you can see that I get meters inside there. And if I drag the scale of this over, I can have nice big meters. Now, I'm playing on a very restrictive screen size here. This is, I think, about 1600 by 900, and I'm on a 27-inch display. So you can get a lot more room inside here. I'm using the scroll wheel, as I mentioned, on one track. But if I wanted to look at the all of my tracks, if I hold the Shift key down and do that, then you'll see each one of them open up. I'm going to tap the tilde key just to make this a little bit larger. Now you can see I get VU meters now for all the tracks that are playing. So that is something that's not turned on by default, but it's really nice to see that and show that. And there's the track volume in dB that I could either click and drag left and right with scrubby settings, or I could click inside here and I could set that to 0 dB just like that. So you don't even have to go out to the mixer if you wanted to do some quick work inside there. Again, I'll hold my Shift key down and collapse all of that information. The tilde key is a great keyboard shortcut that if you start using any of the Adobe video applications, you'll love. It takes whatever panel you're over top of, and I don't have to click with my mouse. I'm just over here on the right, and I tap the tilde key, and it makes that panel full screen. Over in my bin, if I had a lot of organizing work to do, my goodness, that's a lot of work. And like I said, I'm at a lower resolution, so if this was a giant 27 or 30-inch display, I could be doing a lot of moving around inside here. One thing that we added just for the Final Cut users is if I want to look at this, my program monitor in full screen, and I tap the tilde key, it looks bigger, but it's not really full screen because we get to see all this window chrome around here. And we listened very closely to Final Cut users who wanted a cinema mode. So if I add the Control key both on Mac and Windows, so I'm holding the Control, tapping tilde, and now I've got a full screen playback inside there. Yay! And hit Escape to get out of there. So those are just some great ways of working within the timeline. Really nice ways of working on those things. We added the, we've had them before, the up and down arrow to jump between clips. we changed this, again, based on feedback from users. For years, it used to be the page up and the page down key. The problem with the page up and page down key is they don't have those on a typical laptop, especially Apple laptops are usually missing page up and page down, and that's why we switched to the more natural up and down. We also heard loud and clear from users, sometimes they don't want it to just move up and down. They want to go to a clip and they want it selected. So if I add the, where am I here? If I add the control key, same on the Mac, control up and down, you can see right now I'm selecting everything on V1 as I'm moving up and down. So not just moving the playhead, but also selecting something up and down. We also added the new ability to hold the Alt key on Windows, Option on Mac, and I'm pressing the up and down arrow, holding the Alt and Option key, and yay, we get to toggle a clip's position up or down. Big request from users. They love that. Keeping in line with that same idea of being able to manipulate clips, here you want a really good reason why Creative Cloud is great. It's because this next feature is typical of an update that you would not have seen for a whole year. We had a big request when we shipped in May of this year. Customers said, we want a global unlink, where you can take everything that is normally linked, like you can see when I click on this video clip, the audio clip is linked when I click on that one. All of these are linked. That one is not linked. Final Cut users told us they like to temporarily unlink the whole timeline to do manipulations. Well, that's what this button is right here. Link selection or linked on everything. So now, as I click on things, they're all unlinked temporarily while I'm working on them, and I can go back to relinking them. Really, really powerful. I never missed that because I've always used the Option or Alt key. If I temporarily want to select something that and unlink it, I just held down the Option on the Mac, Alt key on Windows, and I clicked on that audio clip. And if I wanted to, I could hit delete and remove that. So we already have a built-in way to temporarily unlink one clip. So if you want the global unlink, that's why we put that in there. All right. Next up is working with our trimming controls, and I think that this was something that we really updated, and it is fantastic. Here's two clips. This clip, him coming down and him going over top. And you can see that I'm not on the end of the clip. We now have indicators that will show us if we're at the end of a clip. I don't know if I've got enough here to show you. Yeah, that clip is too long to do that. But I know now that I actually have media in between these two clips. So let's say that I wanted to do a rolling edit in between these two clips right here. Well, if I click and let go, then I'm going to be doing a trim. And if I double click on this and open it up, I'm just going to open up my trim a little bit more. And actually, I think I'm just editing that guy. We did ask Bandito Brothers for a full real motion picture timeline, so that's why we've got all of these massive clips going on in here, and sometimes I get fooled as to what clip I'm editing. Okay, here we go. So there, Danny Way coming down, and then him doing his giant jump right there. Let's say that I wanted the timing change between these two. If I just click inside, this is just a trim. And if I trim by holding down the Option key on Mac, I'm holding the Control key on Windows, and you can see that I'm moving the left and right arrows, and I'm changing that trim point. But I don't want destructive trim. I want a rolling edit in here. So a couple of ways to do this. The harder way, where you have to stop and right-click, allows me to choose a ripple trim in, out, rolling edit, trim in, trim out. So if I want a rolling edit, I can click in here. Or if I hold down the Shift-T or Control-T on the Mac. On Windows, Shift-T, and I can tab. I'm just tapping that T key, and I'm able to go through all of those at the same time. And what's really cool about this is I'm going to select this, set an in and out point, mark selection in here, loop inside here, press the space bar, and I'm going to loop inside here, and I'm going to do a rolling edit while that's playing and looping. And I could actually have multiple edit points if I wanted to right now. So this is really nice to check that edit out. Do I want more of him going down the ramp, or do I want to jump right to him actually getting in there and jumping up on that clip pretty quick? While that's still rolling, I'm hitting Shift-T. So now I'm doing a ripple trim out on the tail of that clip, so I can move that around. And of course, I could have protected. You can see some of the other clips are moving, and I could easily have protected those layers. So lots of great ways to work with trimming. We can also, I just hit the +2 key, so the plus key on my numeric keypad, and then number 2 is going to trim that in and out 2 keyframes. If you press the T key, it brings up our trim monitor, and you don't have to use this. You can use the editing that I was showing you in here, but the trim monitor over here, and I can change my display. I can move this. Oops, I don't want to edit that. I just want to change the position. So now I have a very large trim window. I can move, this is basically a rolling edit, plus and minus left and right, plus and minus 5. Or if I actually move my mouse into this area, I get a rolling edit, or I get a ripple trim on each one of those sides. So great stuff if you're doing match edits inside here. Press the T key again, and I get out of the trim window. A couple of other things that are really important, and some of these are Final Cut things, and some of them are Avid things. So let's say that I've got a rolling edit right now, and I want that rolling edit to move to where my playhead is. If I hit the E key, it will jump to the playhead. So wherever that is, it's extend edit to playhead. So that's something that a lot of folks use. But Avid, quite honestly, was really more advanced when it came to trimming beyond Final Cut and beyond Premiere Pro. So we have taken some tips from Media Composer. If I go to my keyboard shortcuts, and of course, I should always mention that we have built-in Final Cut and Media Composer keyboard shortcuts. But I'm going to search for trim, and I'll show you that I have 2 of these extra ones set up. Ripple trim next edit to playhead. This is not set by default. I've got it on the W key, and the ripple trim previous edit, which is previous to the W key, is the Q key. So that's the reason I've got these side by side, previous and next. Previous Q, next W. Why Q and W? Because they're right next to the E key, and the E key is for extend edit to playhead. So here's the cool thing about this. It's ripple trim without having to set an edit point. So I don't have to click in here and set an edit point. If I hit the W key, I just did ripple trim next edit to playhead. If I'm going to move over here and hit the Q key, I just did ripple trim previous edit to playhead. So those are 2 that are not set up by default that I highly advise you check out and add those. All right, let me get back to a larger file here. Okay, next up is paste attributes. So we heard loud and clear that users want to be able to paste attributes for clips, and we have that now. We actually have something a little bit more advanced, and I'm going to take you through that now. So I'm going to zoom into this area because I want you to look very closely. Hopefully you can see this over the web. These little badges in here. That badge is an FX badge, and you can see we also have them on audio. This badge is colored green, and the rest of them are all gray. Gray means there has been nothing changed from the default. There are no intrinsic effect changes or filters. So any of the effects that we have in the filters have not been applied. This one is green because it actually has had some stuff applied. So there's a fast blur inside here that's not turned on, but it is applied. I'm just going to delete that. And when I do, you'll notice the color changes to a yellow color. And what yellow shows you is that something has changed in the intrinsic effects. The intrinsic effects are anything that is in the upper portion here that is inherent with any clip at all. So if you bring in any clip, it has position, scale, rotation, anchor point, opacity, time remapping. This one happens to be set yellow because if you notice my scale property here, the scale is set to 134%. So if I turn that off temporarily, you can see that the director decided they wanted that zoomed in a little bit more, 134%. So let's say on top of that, I want a black and white effect. So I'm going to double click and apply my black and white. And now you'll notice the badge in the timeline is green. So gray means nothing. Yellow means something has changed in the intrinsic effects. Purple means that we've changed both. Green means both, and purple means we've just added an effect in here. So I've got black and white, and I've got scale inside here. If I copy this now, move over to my second clip, and I can either use my keyboard shortcut or my pop-up menu, or I can use the edit menu to paste attributes. Here's the cool thing about paste attributes. I can now pick which effects I'm going to apply. This was our ability to take what customers asked for and give them even more. Instead of just saying all effects or none, you get to pick the effects you want. So let's say I don't want any of the motion, opacity, time remapping. I just want my black and white effects inside there. Click OK. You can see it's black and white, but it hasn't been scaled. And because of that, my badge is now purple. Purple meaning I have a filter. I don't have any changes to the intrinsic effects. Back over here on this one, I've got both intrinsic and filters on there. Very nice, very big update, and you can call that your feature if you're one of the very vocal people that asked us for it. Great, you now have that in there. Okay, next up is looking at our mixers, and again, we listened very close to users, and let me just find my audio sequence. And in this audio sequence, I'm going to open up this particular clip, and this clip I'm going to edit in the brand new clip mixer. So we used to just have an audio mixer. Now we specifically have a clip mixer, and the audio mixer is now called the track mixer. And track mixer means that you're applying automation to the whole track, and this is just to the single clip. So we're working on audio 3. So inside audio 3 here, if I click on this button that says write keyframes, and I make a change to that keyframe, I'm just going to make sure that I've got everything set up correctly here. And I never know why that particular demo file, I want to find the guy that made that demo file and ask him why he makes that disabled. So instead, I moved it to number 2. So let's try that. So I'm going to move my playhead to this position, click on this little diamond shape, which if you're familiar with keyframes in Premiere Pro and After Effects, it looks like a little keyframe. It's saying write keyframes. And I could do this if it was playing. So this automation doesn't have to be written by me being stopped. It's just I want to show you what's going on inside there. So here I did a little automation. You can actually see that in here right now. Each one of the keyframes is editable. I can click and move those around inside there. I can right-click and change these to linear, Bezier, auto Bezier, auto Bezier, continuous, hold, ease in, ease out, however I want to mix that. You can thin this stuff down. I can select multiple points and move them around. I can select a point and hit the delete key if I wanted to. But more importantly, the main reason to have keyframes in a clip mixer is this. When I move the clip, the automation moves with the clip. That's why it's important. Let's say that you went in and you used this to get rid of clicks or pops or ums or and ahs. You want it to stay within the clip, and if we didn't do that, it would be in the track. So we also, as I mentioned, have our track mixer, and you can use them both at the same time. So our track mixer opens up here, and for audio track 2, I can choose to write this information inside here. So this is a little bit more like a regular digital audio workstation where I can choose write, latch, touch, or off. And we do work with different control surfaces now. And I can write this information, and it would write anything that I'm doing to the track. What's important is you're looking at the track information inside here. So I think that's the best of both worlds. We give you, you know, that kind of automation that you've expected and work with very easily. In the little wrench inside here, you can also turn on and off to show video keyframes, audio waveforms, audio names. So however you want to work with that, the tracks, and you can save these as presets. So we give you a couple, minimize all and expand all, but it's really easy to really customize that header. Okay, one other editing finesse thing that is pretty darn powerful, and I think this deserves some mentioning. Here we've got a sequence of a bunch of clips, and we're going to use this as a nested sequence. What you might not know is if I go to my source monitor and drag this nested sequence into the source monitor, I'm actually previewing a sequence in my source monitor, and I can use this just as if it was a regular clip, including we've got keyboard shortcuts for insert and overwrite. So if I go to a completely different sequence now, and I'll make this area available, if I take this sequence right now and drag it in, you can see it comes in as a single clip, as a nested sequence, and that's just fine. You'll also notice that we're going to respect the track targeting. So if I have no audio track targeting turned on, I will get no audio coming in. If I use my insert command, it comes in as that one clip. But if I click on this button over here, which changes it to overwrite sequences as nests or individual clips, watch what happens to the track targeting. Boom, they all turn on. And now when I bring this in, if I click to insert this, you can see it's kind of hard to see because it's so fast. But let me drag this in to show you what it would be doing. It's actually bringing in all the clips all at the same time. And this is great if you wanted to now work with these clips. Maybe you wanted the first few clips, and then you're going to delete these other ones that you didn't want. So really easy to work with those. That's different than having to go all the way to this sequence, select all the pieces you want, copy, and then go back to this sequence. So that little button right there now allows you to insert either a sequence or a nested clip. And by default, it's turned on as the old way of doing things, or the typical way, which would bring it in as a sequence. So a couple of important things in there to understand: that it works with our track targeting, and it also works with that button up there turned on and off. All right.
Hey, Colin, I've got a couple questions coming in. This might be a good time to tackle a few of these, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, so one of the questions is there a way to see record and SRC timecode at the same time?
For recording, well, like a voiceover? That's
you know, they're saying that in Avid there's a they can add lines to see each of the different time codes, source time code, master time code, duration. They're able to add that and are just wondering if there's a way to do that within Premiere.
I don't think there is, but if we could take some of those questions and I will email back the answer.
Okay, no problem.
I'll find out. I don't think there is, but I could be wrong.
One other question is how and where do you see the track automation after you record it?
The track automation, if I open this up and click inside here and change this from clip keyframes to track keyframes. It's that little button right over there, show keyframes. And when you're on clip keyframes, it looks like a larger triangle. And when you're down here on track keyframes, that's this thing here. That's what you would be recording the automation with.
Perfect. And can you just touch on the difference between normal audio tracks and submix audio tracks?
Sure. So if we go back to our audio track mixer, and we can create a, forgive me, add audio tracks, add audio submix track. The audio submix tracks, you would use those, let's say right here, this is my audio submix track. Instead of this track, I'm going to flip this down over here. Let me just make this a little bit larger so we can see. So this is my submix now, S1. I'll do the one right beside it, A11 over here. If I wanted to, I could send this to submix 1. And I could send this one to submix 1 and this one to submix 1. And then I tell it how loud am I sending that signal over to that submix. Now all of these channels will be playing. You can see submix now is playing in here. The reason you would do this is, let's say that these were a bunch of background dialogue effects, dialogue tracks, and I wanted to add a reverb to this because I want it to fit more as room ambience inside here. So if I go to my submix track and add reverb to this, then the reverb that I'm adding to this, and if I make this a church, now all 3 tracks will be playing their audio out to the submix track with this reverb. So instead of putting each one of these tracks with the same reverb, they're going through this track. So as I turn this track down, I'm going to be turning the reverb up and the reverb down.
Very cool. There's, let's see, one other question. Can you just touch on audio output mapping a little bit?
Sure. Well, when we create a sequence, you're going to be creating the audio tracks for that sequence here. That's for the default out. And then for the master, you need to make sure that you set this before you actually create anything, because you can't change a sequence after you've made it. So by default, this is going to be a stereo sequence, or a 5.1, or multi-channel. So multi-channel out, you can have up to 32 channels of audio out. So these are the tracks, and that's the master track that I've got there. So that will make a 32-track output file. And if I wanted to map tracks inside here, so let me add So audio tracks, I'm going to add an adaptive audio track before the first track. And now this adaptive audio track, you can see it has this little icon in here. If I click inside that, it brings up my channel mapper. If this was stereo, then I would only see 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. But I can now map any one of these channels to any one channel. So input 1, well, let's go all the way to input 32. I could map that to input 1 if I wanted to. So that's
So
1 and 32.
Can I use that to have multiple monitors being fed the same stereo output of the final mix?
Sure, as long as your hardware supports that.
Okay, cool.
Because if I go into my preferences, audio hardware, right now I'm using, if I switch to my Sapphire, you can see now that I've got all of the outputs. On my specific Sapphire output only has 16 outs, but I could use all of them. And then there's default settings in here from where your 5.1 will be monitored. On this system, it's not made for 5.1. It's a multi-channel out. And I've got 1 to 6 mapped to those, and also 1 and 2 mapped to the stereo out.
Awesome. Very cool.
It also makes, yeah, it also, it's important here in the audio preferences. We added this, we really borrowed this from Audition, the audio plugin manager. And this is important on a system like I have right here. This is my music workstation / video editing workstation. So as you can see, I've got a Steinberg folder here full of VST plugins that mean absolutely nothing, like the guitar rig. That means nothing to video. So I could enable or disable whatever plugins I want if I had trouble with some of these. And up at the top, you'll notice I can add VST plugin folders in here, and we support audio units on the Mac. So this solved a lot of problems before. If you're, you ended up with a virtual grand piano inside your nonlinear editor, it wasn't a good thing. All right. Let me just close this project up, and I'm going to open up one other project and show you Multicam. Now we do have new sync capabilities, and let me just make sure that it's finding all of my clips here. Something that people have used in the past would be something like Pluralize, and we now have that capability built in. So if you've got secondary audio, let's say you shot something on a Canon 5D, and then you also did secondary audio somewhere else, you can now merge those two together directly inside here. So we don't have to count on any third-party tools anymore. I'm not sure why it doesn't like those files, so just give me a quick second here. So we can also use that audio syncing capability now for working with Multicam. So if you don't have time code, you can now just use the audio as long as each one of the cameras has captured some kind of audio loud enough for us to see. We'll look at the different levels, and we will merge those together. On any other day other than today, when my demo file is not happy, and let me just see why that isn't. We can start taking questions, and I will make a change here into Premiere Pro, and I promise to show you this. So why don't we take some questions right now? Okay. Let me try this now. At least with the clips that it's understanding. So I'm going to grab a whole bunch of concert clips, and I'm going to choose Create Multicam Source Sequence. And we get a few more choices. This is completely redesigned from our previous version. We can use the in and out points if they match. Time code, which is what I'm using if you have it. Here's the audio settings. So that's what we don't need a third-party tool for anymore. We will actually analyze the audio and bring those in. We can also offset the audio by a certain amount of frames if things were out of sync. And that, again, comes from our Final Cut users asked for that one. I can tell it to move these to a new bin just to clean things up. I can tell it which sequence settings to use from camera 1. And I can also tell it the audio channel. So if I wanted to create an adaptive 5.1 or stereo output, I could. And I'll just call this Multicam. And it's now moved those files over there. And it's created a new sequence right here. So I'm just going to double-click on this sequence and hit play. And you can see it's playing all of those at the same time. If I right-click on that sequence and choose New Sequence from Clip, because remember, this is a Multicam source sequence, so just like working with a source clip, creating a new sequence from Clip will create a new sequence from Clip. And to see the Multicam, if you have been a long-time Premiere Pro user, you might be looking in here for it anymore. But now it's actually a button. This isn't turned on by default. These buttons down here are customizable. So I can click on this button editor, open this up, and I dragged this down in here. This is my new Multicam display. So when I click on that, I get a larger Multicam display of all of this. I'll unmute my audio here, jump back to the beginning, and hit play. So right now, this is yellow. It means that I'm not recording my edit. So I'm going to now start clicking in here, or I can use the keyboard from 1 to, I believe it's 16 or 18 up at the top. These are the numeric numbers at the top of the keyboard. And I'll hit spacebar, and I'll start editing this. And when I hit the space bar down at the bottom, you can see I have my edits now showing up. I'll roll this back and hit play. It's going to play back my edit. If I'm over top of any one of these cuts and I wanted a different clip, I actually have, this guy's a little bit dark, so if I wanted to choose a different clip, I don't have to select that down here. I just have to click into a different camera and it's going to replace that whole clip. We didn't used to do this. We would actually have cut this clip in half simply by clicking on a different camera angle. So we're not doing that anymore. If you do want to cut, hold the control key or the command key on the Mac. Now when I click, it's actually put a cut between there and change that. All of the same tools that you have for ripple and trim all work inside here very easily. This is a typical multicam. You can also right-click on this multicam, and you can pick a different camera. Or I could hit the number keys, and thank goodness we can finally flatten this. Big request from users who are going out to EDLs from a multicam shoot. Of course, EDLs don't support multiple layers, but this would flatten that out for us, and then we could send that out to a multicam. The only thing I would suggest in working with this is, as I mentioned down here, this is our multicam display. I moved this over because I don't really need that source monitor anymore. Instead of doing that all the time, it would make sense to go to the workspace and create a new workspace and then name this multicam. So you would enable everything, hit that workspace, open this up quite large, and now you're previewing that. So with that, that is all I wanted to talk about today in this segment about editing picture tips and tricks, editing and mixing audio. Now we'll open it up to more questions.
Very cool. Thank you, Colin. There's definitely a few questions here to go through.
Okay.
So one of the questions, so somebody said there's sometimes problems with importing clips, same format, one is accepted and the other is not. Have you ever run into that? Do you know what that might be?
If they're, I'm sorry, they're the same format?
Yeah, so they go to input or import two different clips. They're the same format of clip, and one of them gets accepted and the other doesn't get accepted.
I have no idea why that would happen.
Yeah.
One suggestion I would have is to use the media browser and not use the file import command. The media browser is much, much smarter and understands metadata and card spanning and things like that. So just try doing that.
Yeah, very cool. On the submix that you were showing earlier, does the volume control, does that apply to effects only, or does it also apply to level and gain?
Okay, let me go back and grab my track mixer. So are they asking the volume from the submix?
Exactly.
From like this is, I think
So
that's
I think
pre-save.
they're asking that when you create a submix and you've got your submix master fader, does that control just the amount of the effect, or does that control the actual gain of the submix as well?
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is everything. So
Okay.
it's, because you got to remember that this this doesn't have anything in it. It's fed from this track over here, and then you add the effects after that. So it's attenuating everything inside here. Okay. So both it's the volume coming in from multiple tracks and the effects that you've applied.
Now in CS6, the when using color correction, the correction wouldn't show up in the Multicam edit. Has that been changed in Creative Cloud?
Okay. Where are they adding the effects? That's my question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I'm not sure.
Like if they're adding it to the original.
Is there a way to add the effect that it will go across all of the Multicam edits?
Well,
oh, they said they're adding the effect on the original clip.
The original clip, because the original, well, we, because to take that original clip, you can't really add something to that. Oops, where are we? That clip. You basically have to put this into a sequence, and we can't really open up that sequence. So here's the workaround or the method that I would suggest that I believe makes a lot of sense. Let's say that I was using the some of the Lumetri looks inside here. I'll use cinematic number 2 on this concert inside here. What I think would be a better method of working is to create, I'll go back to my project here, and I'll create an adjustment layer. I'll drag the adjustment layer above the Multicam clip, everything on here. So this is now more like After Effects or Photoshop. I'll go back to my effect, and I'll take cinematic and I'll drop it on there. And is this what you were talking about? It does an effect. Oh. I just found something that you might be talking about. Oh, no, it's a subtle effect. It is working. I just happened to pick cinematic. So that's turned off. That's turned on. You can see it crushes the blacks a little bit more. I'm doing it on an adjustment layer, and I can turn that adjustment layer on and off and change its opacity if I wanted to. and it spans the whole clip. I like this because you don't have to go into anything to make a change. If I wanted to change this, let's say that it wasn't the Lumetri effect. If this was something like the fast color corrector, then while I'm changing this up here, it's going to be changing for the whole sequence. And all of these clips, let me just mute that here while it's going on.
How would you do that then if there was just one clip that, you know, they're throwing out the scenario where there's a single clip that has a bad white balance and they just want to fix it on the one clip but leave the other clips alone?
That's an email one. Email me that one and I'll come back with that because.
All right, no problem. And just for reference, in case they did not get that earlier, you can email marketing@promax.com. You can email me directly, nate.cooper@promax.com. Or Colin, what is your email address?
COSmith@adobe.com.
Easy enough. Very cool. You know, this is more of a general question, but we've got a Final Cut Pro 7 editor that's migrating over to Premiere Pro, and they want to know what your suggestion on the best way to have, you know, get an understanding of, maybe even have somebody see what they do in Final Cut 7, help them learn to do that in Premiere. What would you suggest to a person that wants to do that, Colin?
Well, we've got some switcher resources on Adobe TV and Adobe.com, and then there's other great sites like Lynda, and they're set up directly for Final Cut users that are moving over. But Adobe TV is a good place to start.
Very cool. Is there anything like Avid's Animat within Premiere Pro without having to go to After Effects?
To track a mat?
Yes.
Well, we've got the mats that we have. Let me just close that up. I'll just show you very quickly what we do have. Let me grab a better clip inside here. So I don't know too much about that. I don't know if it's the automation, like the tracker that they're asking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But there are garbage mats, image mats that you can, you know, drag onto these clips and either edit them numerically or move them around directly inside here. So there's some masking in here, but most people will, for more advanced stuff, jump out to After Effects. It's important to note that if I wanted this to go out to After Effects and run an effect, I can use Dynamic Link. Not sure if that particular person has seen this, but if I right-click on that clip and choose Replace with After Effects Composition, I'm directly linked without rendering between After Effects and Premiere Pro. So I could be doing the masking, matting, everything with Alpha Channels Complete. This could be on its own layer, and it would show through on layers below, and everything would be taking place inside After Effects.
All right, very cool. And there's a couple questions on Multicam. One of them is, in order to use Multicam cleanly, do you need to start the recordings on all of your cameras at the same time?
Nope. As I was showing you before, when I was working on all of these clips, create multicam source sequence, tons of people have been doing this with DSLRs, with no time code, different times that things are set up. So you can now combine them or merge them using audio. So we will read the audio as long as that camera and the secondary files all have audio running in them. But we will now look at the audio and we'll match that and line everything up.
Very cool. Great to know. And one other question about Multicam. Was the camera changes that you were creating, was that just by having the playhead over the clip versus selecting the clip?
Where am I? Yeah, exactly. So when I'm in multicam mode, as I'm in right now, just enabling multicam, it has to have at least one of these selected as a yellow. And when I hit play, it'll turn red. So you don't have to select this clip down here in the timeline. You're doing nothing in the timeline. You're either doing it on the screen in the source area, hitting the number keys over here, and or hitting the number keys, and it would change automatically.
Very cool. And looks like, oh, we got a couple more questions rolling in. One question on audio again. How do you change the audio source?
The audio source from what?
Yeah, they don't say specifically from what, but I'm guessing different analog inputs maybe. Or nope, they've clarified within the Multicam tool. How do you select which audio source is coming from the Multicam tool?
Well, when you're making the multicam, you choose which one it is. You're free here to, of course, drop in any more audio. And you also have the option, which is not common, but you can have the multicam audio follows video. But when I'm making it over here, as I was doing before, create multicam source, you can tell it video clip in name. You can, if I go back to my multicam sequence, right-click, modify audio channels, just like we do on a regular clip, you can change these inside here. Now I know there's a way to set up which one it is. That's an emailer. Email that one. But you do have the option. I'm just not sure where it is right now. Oh. No, that's turning on this. Switching camera audio is switching this. So email me that one and I'll get you an answer on that.
Very cool. And another multicam question, are there any tips to getting the clips to sync well together, like maybe having a sharp clap or some kind of trigger at the start of a clip, or are the audio waveforms generally enough?
The audio waveforms are generally enough if they're loud enough. And of course you could edit those and render and replace those with something like Premiere Pro or Audition. But yeah, typically if this is camera audio that you have and then you've got a boom mic and a lapel mic, that's going to be enough for you to sync all of those together. We've done a remarkable job of our audio sync and merging capability. It really is amazing.
And how difficult is it if you're doing like a temporary mix, or you know, maybe a sound editor is working on mixing this the tracks and gives you a stereo final? How easy is it to replace it in the final mix?
Replace this one over here?
Yeah, so you're just working off of a temporary mix and you want to replace it with the final.
Well, you would have to resync it if it was different timing. If the timing was exactly the same and the beginning was at the beginning here, you could delete it out of there. But basically, it's like replacing any audio inside here. It's just another linked file that you're changing.
All right, very cool. Let's see. All right, and one question, can you right-click on the audio track itself and change the audio channel there?
Can I change, you mean where it's mapped to?
I believe so. Yeah,
no.
can you just right-click there and change the audio track?
The remapping that you're seeing here is because these are adaptive tracks. If these are just regular stereo tracks, there is no mapping whatsoever. If it's a stereo track, then you can go to your audio track mixer and you're using your left and right fader here. But if these were adaptive, then clicking on that brings this audio up. So the remapping only works with adaptive audio. This particular file is stereo out, but if it was 32 channels out, then I could map any one of those anywhere I wanted. But they have to be adaptive tracks.
All right, very cool. Well, that wraps up our time for today. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure having everybody involved here, and lots of great questions from the audience. And Colin, once again, thank you for your time and putting this all together for us. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and always very informative. So if anybody has any additional questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You should have our emails from signing up, but if you need it, you can either email marketing@promax.com or email Colin directly at cosmith@adobe.com, or you can get me directly at nate.cooper@promax.com. So everyone, thanks for joining us, and have a great day.